upset if in fact there isn't a time pressure associated with adoption of capital budget to say, and when everybody comes into an agreement, there'll be an amendment. At least it puts the government officials on record as having taken a position. It's not, and I think it's a little bit different, but it's close to what Joyce is saying, because it is political. It makes the government officials stand up and say, this is what we stand for, as opposed to, it doesn't matter which branch, or each branch pointing the finger at the other and saying, they're at fault. They're the ones that are refusing to act because blah, 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 whatever it may be. Okay? And that, I think, I've said it accurately, is at least the thought that's behind the one word charter amendment. It just has one word. It's kind of interesting. One word can cause so much consternation. And what I have not yet heard is structurally why that is a bad thing. The only thing that I can come up with is I can only come up with the black. So far, playing devil's advocate is it puts it, the only thing I can think of structurally is that one could argue that it puts the city council in a position of having to either hold up government operating or acquiesce. And then the answer to that, I'm sitting here and saying, well, maybe Chuck's answer is the answer. So they turn around and say, okay, well, it's going to be a zero capital budget, boys, and girls, until we sit down and reach agreement. I'm going to hold up your operating agreement, but we're going to tell you, no, we're not agreeing to this capital budget. It's going to be zero, and then everybody's on record, and then the public can turn around and judge both sides.
What happened in Joe's executive side?
Executive has proposed a budget that presumably the city council deems to the capital budget. The city council deems to be unreasonable, too much money, either we're not spending the money that's out there, whatever the reason may be. And so the city council turns around and says, well, we're forced to do something. We think your budget is unreasonable, so we're going to adopt a zero budget. And when we come back with something that's reasonable and we can agree on it, we're happy to amend it. And I don't like that process, frankly. It doesn't feel right to me. But I'm still working my way through to say, well, is that better than just having both branches of government be able to step back into the comfort zone, frankly, and say, well, it's a big deal. And so we'll just, it's easier for us to turn around and just blame the other side and let this thing slide.
And Steve, I don't know what Bob alluded to also. We know that the June 1st deadline is real for the operating budget. We absolutely know that. And we had to comply last year because the state was on top for the first time in 20-something years. And we complied.
Did you have a heart attack?
No.
I did.
Well, the state did.
There must be something wrong with this picture.
I think every elected official understands that is real.
But it's not the June deadline, June 1st deadline that you're reacting to. In reality, you're reacting to another deadline about getting the tax increase. You're actually totally blowing off the June 1st deadline.
Right.
And that's part of what we're reacting to here, that deadline is being obliterated and not, but you're reacting to the tax filing and tax relief deadline.
Right.
So we need to do something. That Bob, you said, yeah, that's exactly the issue. People say, because in practice, what we're proposing won't actually change, doesn't have to change what you've done already in terms of when the budget is passed. What it will change is the city council standing up and saying it. Because currently, by not voting anything in, there is $0 being voted in if you don't vote anything in, right? And then at some point later, you vote in something. But you don't have to say anything about it. You don't have to deal with anything. This way, you would have to actually say you're voting zero for it, and then at some later date, have to come up and say you're voting X dollars in. Is that correct? Am I missing anything?
Joe, if you're saying zero, though, and that's their way out, like it doesn't work, okay, it's still going to do the same thing anyway. Now, but they're saying, listen, I'm saying zero because, tell him Phil what he's saying.
Right.
That's fine. It's still the same thing, isn't it?
And I'm suggesting that,
So they go on record at zero.
well, that's a big difference. That's the big difference.
You think so?
I think so. I think people
I
have
as
to
the
stand.
taxpayer saying, you know what?
No,
They're
they,
not agreeing on it again, they're gonna have to come to terms and they have another.
wouldn't you like to
person.
know someone said that they're not agreeing? Wouldn't you like someone to have to stand up in a room and say, this is my position, rather
But
than,
aren't they saying that by not voting a budget in place? Isn't it the same thing? Saying, listen, we don't have a right, we can't get along with this, you know, we're gonna have to come up with something else. Isn't that the same as saying, I mean, isn't it semantics by saying zero or not? In essence, you're saying the same thing.
I'm
You're
saying, in some ways, in some practical issues, it is very similar.
I know what he's voting for. I'm listening to the hearings, and I know that he don't want to see the mayor's X, Y, Z get in there for obvious reasons. They're not going along. Not the same saying zero. We're not going to vote for that. I don't know. To me, you know, I'm a street guy, and that's like street stuff.
It's
But,
not-
you know,
But what about the opposite, if there are funds that they all agree on? You know, say it's 90 million, and they all agree on 20 million, or they hold up that 20 million because they can't agree on the rest of the 70 million. By June 1st, they can go to 20 million CIP, and then have funds available to start doing things.
Gene, that could happen now.
Yeah,
That could happen now. That goes back to the 5 votes. That's where it all falls apart. Because then that's when the politics between the two branches of government come in. Because we could get 5 votes for 20 million. Okay? We could have gotten 5 votes for 20 million. But that's not good for the executive branch. So they gotta go out and pick off that 5th vote. Now we're back to 4.
well,
That's what
but I
happens.
think what we're proposing is that if you can decide on an amount, you can always go back and amend it later on after June 1, but, and the executive branch might not agree
Right.
that you haven't passed the whole 90 million, but you at least passed a portion of it so they can move forward with that and then we can go back and amend it.
The problem there, though, Gene, in fairness to the city council, is just because the city council, correct me if I'm wrong, because the city council votes the 20 million, doesn't mean that the mayor has to vote one. The mayor can turn around and veto that budget. And so it's not just that, I appreciate what you're saying, but unfortunately, it doesn't, just because the city council would take a lesser included number in what the mayor proposed, doesn't mean that the city council can dictate that number back to the mayor. So eventually, there has to be a meeting of the minds. And, you know, for better or for worse, I think for better, there's separate branches of government. So, yes, you're right procedurally, but it would still require the same level of consent. Both would have to do something. All right, I'll be a little cynical. Both would have to turn around and put their respective political purposes aside and decide that for the good of the city, it would be better to have a 20 million capital budget that everybody can agree on and then haggle and negotiate about the rest than to hold out and use as a political cudgel against the other side why it is